Peace, y'all. Mr. Livinoche. Yeah, so we're in video 4 right now. And, you know, it's getting close to the test for you guys. I don't know the exact date, but we already worked on the introduction, right? I told y'all what we were going to be doing. After that, I told y'all a couple of things about that you need to know about figurative language, so hopefully you got that information. And lastly, I went over with you, what did I go over last time? Oh, last time I went over with you answering multiple choice questions and some strategies there. Today's video, by far, is going to be the most important video. So make sure you got your journal out, make sure you got your pen ready, because we're going to be doing something today that's going to help you with pretty much everything on the test, because we're going to be going over some important terms, and we're also going to be talking about how to answer open-ended questions. Alright? So before I get into everything, I just want to kind of gloss over everything we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to give you guys 10 terms. And these terms are going to be mostly terms you're going to see in the directions and the instructions. When you're going to be asked to write something, you're going to have to recognize these terms, and you're going to have to know them and understand exactly what they mean. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to, you know, for the most part, you're going to have to read a short story. It's going to be timed, and you're going to have to answer some multiple choice questions during your test, the language arts portion of your test. And then you're going to be asked to answer 1 or 2 open-ended questions. And an open-ended question, the difference between that and a multiple choice question is multiple choice, you got to select the correct answer from 4 or 5 possible choices, A, B, C, or D, or E. And with this, an open-ended question, they're going to ask you to think about something and give them an answer, you know, that has an open end, not a closed end, meaning, you know, the answer's not in front of you, you've got to come up with it yourself. Couple of quick tips. It's not usually about your opinion, what you think, what you feel. I don't care about that, man. What they care about is whether or not you understood what you read, and also that you understand what you're being asked. I mean, that's kind of like a hidden part of the question. Do you understand what you're being asked? So the terms you want are analyze, 1, analyze, 2, persuade, 3, compare, 4, contrast, 5, summarize, 6, demonstrate, 7, describe, 8, explain, 9, interpret, and 10, infer. Those are all terms that you're going to probably see when you're being asked the question, right? And you're going to need to know exactly what they're asking you to do, because it's not all the same. There's little variations and subtle differences between things that if you miss it, you're going to get something wrong. And I'll go over what these terms mean one at a time, all right? Analyze, which you probably already understand, is to really look at something in detail and explain how each part of something functions, right? So if they tell you to analyze a part of the story or analyze a relationship in the story, you're going to want to go over it carefully with a fine-tooth comb and see how those little small parts fit into the whole, right? You know, for example, if you analyze the relationships, and we all seen the movie Titanic, I always use that as an example. If you haven't seen it, you better see it. Analyze the relationship between Jack and Rose, right? And you can say, oh, well, they're boy and girl and they're in love. That's basic. But if you really want to analyze it, you know, Rose is engaged to the mean guy who's her fiance, who's rich, and Jack is a poor but likable artist who, you know, in his wily ways found his way onto the Titanic, and they get to know each other. They don't like each other at first, but then they start to fall in love. That's analyzing something, when you're really breaking down the events and the things that have to do with the people and the characters and their relationship to other characters, etc., etc. So to analyze is to explain how each part functions and fits into the whole. You write the obvious parts as well as the less obvious parts of the details. Okay, 2, persuade. We already kind of glossed over that. You know that to persuade somebody means to convince them or to make an argument for something. It means to take a stance on something. You know, like issue in this country, they talk about gay marriage, right? Whether or not, you know, no matter what you think about that or I think about that, that's an issue. And, you know, if you wanted to persuade somebody that it's right or wrong, you know, for that to be permitted, then you'd be posting up an argument that somebody has a counter argument to. So you're going to have to go through a list of different things and different reasons of why you think that should or should not be permitted in the United States. So to persuade is to convince, to take and defend one side of an issue. 3, compare. And that goes with 4, contrast, right? And it's very important you understand the difference between those two terms. To compare something is to find 2 things, 1 or more things, that have similarities, and you talk about the things that those 2 items or those 2 ideas or those 2 people or those 2 places has in common, right? But to contrast something is the opposite, is to point out the differences between 2 different things, and to talk about the things that those items or those people or those places or those ideas don't have in common. So to compare is to talk about similarities, and to contrast is to talk about differences. So they might ask you to compare and contrast. So that doesn't mean just compare or just contrast. They want you to do both, and usually in that order. So if you read a question that says compare and contrast, or compare or contrast, then you want to take special attention to what they're asking you to do exactly, because they're not just saying, hey, do something, and and you say, oh, I just did something, that's good enough, right? Nah, it's not good enough. You got to do exactly what they're asking. 5, summarize. And as you probably know, that just means to sum up, or to basically give the meaning of something in as short as term as possible. So if you're asked to summarize a story, then you're going to want to summarize the story by wrapping it up and quickly, and as quickly as possible. You tell that story, but you tell it in very few words. You tell a side of the story in very few words. You tell about an event in very few words. So when you're using few words, the few words you use should be effective words, and the way you communicate it should be swift and effective. Demonstrate. That's hard to do when you're writing, because unless you're demonstrating how to write, you can't demonstrate a jumping jack when you're writing. So when they ask you to demonstrate, and it has to do with a writing assignment, you want to give step-by-step instructions on how to do something. Since you can't demonstrate it physically right in front of somebody, you want to demonstrate by giving instructions. If they say demonstrate how to change the engine on a car, you can't do that in a writing assignment, but you could demonstrate how to do something, in a sense that you could say what materials you need, what the practice is, step by step, and what the hopefully what the solution or the end result will be. So to demonstrate when it comes to writing is just an explanation of each initial step and in detail. To describe something means to present somebody with a clear picture, usually using sensory words. So when you describe something using sensory words, what do I mean by senses? We got how many? 5, right? So when you describe something, you're talking about how something smells, how something sounds, how something tastes, how something looks, how it feels. You're using your 5 senses for sensory language, right? So that brings us back to using adjectives, things that describe, words that describe nouns. So you're going to want to talk about, like, the stool is smooth, right? It's smooth and it's sturdy, right? And that's how it feels, right? And sometimes it shakes when I move it. If I tap it, it doesn't sound hollow, right? It sounds solid. It doesn't really smell like much, right? It's brown, but you're using sensory details when you're describing something. When you explain something, tell me more. All right, so if they say explain how blah 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 happened in the story, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to focus on the 5 W's and the 1 H, right? Who, what, where, when, and why, and how did something happen, right? So when you explain something, it's right, the criteria for that is right in front of you, the 5 W's and the 1 H. You're going to explain something in detail. Interpret, that's just another word basically for show your understanding of something. If they ask you to interpret something a character said, or an action a character took, or the meaning of a poem, you're just going to demonstrate or show what your understanding is, and maybe even explain how you came to that understanding by talking about your own experiences of connections you made when you were doing the reading. Lastly, we're going to talk about inferring, or the word infer. When you're asked to infer something from a piece of literature or something you've read, it means you're basically taking the pieces of that literature, the clues that the author gave you, and trying to come to a conclusion that's not immediately obvious, right? So, like, how did the character feel about when her brother got, hit by the car on the bike? Probably sad, right? But, what was the character behaving like? You kind of have to look at the clues and the different things that are going on in the story in order to make inferences, which is kind of an educated guess, and what's educating you is the clues that the author is leaving inside the text. Okay, so those 10 terms are super important for you to understand what they are, so when you're asked these questions on open-ended questions, you're going to be able to answer them properly and know exactly what you're being asked. Okay, to answer open-ended questions, it's a really simple process, but you can get it wrong easily if you don't respect what the process is. A lot of teachers use a lot of different acronyms or short things to try to remind you, give you helpful reminders of how to answer an open-ended question. Mine is RASE, R-A-S-E. And that basically means when you're asked a question, the first thing you do when you start writing is you restate that question, right? And I'm going to read you a quick, and then after that you answer the question completely by referring to the text sometimes. You answer the question completely, so you state the question, basically restate the question, and then you answer it. sometimes in the same sentence, a lot of times in the same sentence. After that, you're going to need to support your answer. And how do you support an answer? A lot of times you refer back to the text. And when you're referring back to that text, make sure you use quotes properly. Remember, punctuation always goes around the piece of the text that you're pulling out to refer to. In paragraph 4, Jimmy said, comma, open quote, blah, 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 close quote. That led me to believe that, right? Okay, so restate, R, A, answer the question, sometimes mostly in the same sentence, S, support, and then after that, E is extend. So after you've already supported your answer that you gave by using the text, you're going to extend your answer. And the way you can do that is by using your own personal experiences, maybe using something that you've read in a book, something you saw in a movie, or any connections you made with that text. And you extend it. And when you extend it, it's telling your reader that not only can you answer the question by referring to it, but you can also add something from you that not your average bear is going to be able to do. So your answer is going to be different from everybody else's because you made a different connection for the most part, most of the time, than other students did. So that's the part where you kind of personalize it. And usually the only part when you personalize it. You don't want to answer a question by using your own personal experience the whole time, because that's a lot of times that's a way that you get away from the text, and that's not what they're asking you to do when they're asking you questions. So raise. We're gonna try this once before I let y'all go. Make sure you have your 10 terms down before you move on in the video. So if you have to pause and go back and write them down, please do. Make sure you have raise down, which is restate the question, answer the question, support your answer, extend your answer. Make sure you have that down. And make sure that your answers are a good 4 or 5 sentences long. You're being graded on a scale of 1 to 4, or 0 to 4 really, right? Depending on how much of this you did. So make sure you take every single part seriously and you complete it when you're writing. We're going to take a favorite, and the poem is We Real Cool by Gwendolyn Brooks. And she wrote mad poems, but this one tends to always show up in the textbooks. And, it starts off and it's basically a scene for you. It's very short, but we can look at it and try to answer a question based on it, just as practice. And the poem goes like this, and I'll put it up here for you guys to read as well. The pool players, 7 at the Golden Shovel. We real cool. We left school. We lurk late, we strike straight, we sing sin, we thin gin, we jazz June, we die soon. So it's a short poem, right? But there's a lot there. So if you read a poem and you just look at, oh, that's cool. But when you want to analyze something like our first term, analyze, you got to look at that poem and see what that author was really trying to say. So what we got here so far is we real cool. We prioritize being cool over everything else, right? We're real smart, we're real rich, or we're real happy. We're real cool. That's what we are, right? 1. We left school. So we don't go to school. We don't prep for our future. What we're doing right now is we're just kind of hanging out, right? We left school. We left that behind. We lurk late. We stay out at night, right? We go out in places we're not supposed to be. Nothing positive happens at 2 a.m. for a teenager out in the street. We lurk late. We strike straight. We fight. We fight. We go out at night and we fight. We lurk late. We strike straight. We sing sin. What is sin? Something you're not supposed to really be doing, right? It's something that's negative, something that's considered not righteous. We sing about it. Not only do we do something negative or we do sin, but we sing about it. We celebrate sin. Listen to y'all listen to the Rick Ross song everybody's talking about, right? Listen to anything that comes out of Lil Wayne's codeine-stained throat, right? We sing sin. We celebrate negativity. We sing sin. We thin gin. G-I-N. Gin is liquor. We thin it. Maybe it means we mix it with something. We drink it. We drink. So far we got we real cool. We prioritize being cool. We left school. We dropped out, right? That's what that means. We lurk late. We go out at night. We strike straight. We fight. We sing sin. We celebrate negative things. We thin gin. We drink, right? We thin gin. We sing sin. We thin gin. We jazz June. And that could refer to a sexual thing, jazz, June. Y'all might not know it's jazz, but jazz, is music, right? So we're partying June. It's warm out. Everybody's having a good time. We jazz June. We die soon, right? So that's the whole poem, And if you look at it and you really examine it and you analyze it, you're going to see that there's something there. It's not just like a bunch of words slapped on a piece of paper. It means something. We made an interpretation of that poem, right? Interpret, what do those things mean? It's not just what's on the paper. It's in the subtext. And I can only make inferences of what's there besides what you see. And it's not going to be as easy for you because I'm mad old, son. So I can just look at something and use my experiences, which are a lot more years than that. But what you can do is you can read that poem and you make your interpretation of it. You draw inferences using your experience. And that is perfectly acceptable. And that's exactly what they're looking for you to do. So whatever you get put in front of you, you're going to have to use those same skills. What could you infer based on what she's written in that poem that she thinks of the youth in her community? What are her concerns and what are her thoughts? You know, so you're sitting there to answer the open-ended question. The first thing you have to do is restate the question. So you're going to say, Gwendolyn Brooks thinks that the, right? And you're already talking about what does Gwendolyn Brooks think about the youth in her community. Gwendolyn Brooks probably thinks the youth in her community are, so we're restating the question, and then we got to give an answer. And let's go back, we real cool, we left school, blah, blah, blah. It all ends up to we die soon. Gwendolyn Brooks is concerned about the future of the youth in her community. And she voices this basically by showing what their priorities are and what their actions are and what those actions usually determine about their future. That last sentence or two, when you're doing the extending, that's like a knockout punch, right? When you're extending the answer, R-A-S-E, that E, that extend, that's where you knock them dead, right? That's where you use that final sentence to really take something that you know about your present day experiences and connect it to something that's happened in the past or whenever the piece was written, whether it be a poem or a short story, all right? So make sure you guys have your 10 terms down. They're going to be super important. If you've got questions about what the terms mean or how you're going to have to use them or what you're expected to know, you can hit me up. If you've got questions about the RASE method, you can hit me up. Your test is coming up soon. You got one more video, and that video is going to be the essay video where I'm going to explain to you guys in detail how to do a persuasive essay, an explanatory/expository essay, or a descriptive/narrative essay. And that's hopefully all that you're going to need. I can provide you guys with practice materials. All you got to do is reach out and holler at me, and you got it, all right? Good luck, guys. I know school's getting hectic. I know that y'all guys are preparing like crazy for the test. If there's anything else I can do to help, let me know. Peace.